Welcome back, everyone. There's a little bit of a break where we just got done with our best of one, but we've had developments here where the stream now, all fixed, good to go. Back once more with DDK and Jake. But so where to start here? Essentially, in the last matchup, we saw Gamma beat Buff Enjoyers, but there is a little point of dispute here, which is that we had one rule in the tournament, which is that you can't go on top of walkers and melee them. Teams are pushing for it, and, well, we might have seen Abrams on top of a walker, meleeing the walker.
Yeah, it's a little egregious. He does it once here, then he DPs and does it again. Yeah. I'm assuming it's just miscommunication from the player. Not being aware that this was banned in the tournament, but doing it back to back off the TP, it's a little hard to ignore.
It's not evidence. He's a criminal.
Yeah. He's caught in 4K.
Yeah. So where this leaves us here is that right now we are going to be replaying the best of one. Is the plan right now. So hopefully we'll be getting into that momentarily as we get the teams here. It is one of those things where, you kind of...
So you're saying that the fans get like a bonus game of Deadlock because someone cheated?
They do.
Amazing. What I love about this
is where we are at right now. But, look, these things happen early in competition. Sometimes there's rules and, it's where we're at.
Yeah, Gamma's going to be kicking themselves for this. Just like, in the end, it's on them, right? For the captain to, see those rules and communicate effectively to the team, let everyone know. It could just be one of those things in the heat of the moment. You're what, 15, 20 minutes into an intense game playing against a strong team, and it slips your mind. It's something we've probably been doing in ranked or something like that, where obviously there's no rule against this. So I think it's understandable from the Abrams player's perspective. I wouldn't blame him too hard. But it is going to be scary, right? Because now Buff Enjoyers has another chance, right? Another opportunity to rewrite history and give themselves one more shot at reclaiming the championship right here in Deadlock Fight Night. And that's something that I think they clearly set out to do today. Being our previous champion, wanting to get back on top and reclaim their spot as the defenders. I think that'll be a good wake-up call for them from that last match. The question is, can they recover the draft? Are there going to be changes? Because they're not going to redo the draft. It's worth knowing. So we're going to keep the same heroes, replay from the start of the game, essentially. But I'm curious, do they have different perspectives? Have they learned something from this game that they can apply in terms of approaching the next?
Yeah, I mean, the perspectives here is that you think about how the mid game went on, where you had ups and downsides of both teams, right? Where Mikhail had periods of just really good rotations, getting good pickoffs, but every time Mikhail would get a good pickoff, it was wanted by Fluoride coming in on the Mo and just landing the perfect combo and keeping people down, especially Sharik in the early game. On top of it, too, D-Mov was getting targeted to where D-Mov was just using Shadow Transformation as soon as a Mo entered within a 30-meter radius. So, some of these trends here might go down a little bit differently in the rematch.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see sort of how the fights fall and so on, but it did really feel like the effort from Gamma was really legit in terms of because they were kind of behind to start with in some certain extent, but still keeping up by using their hero selection to really pound the objectives and mitigate where they were falling behind by being ahead on objectives, and then having that sort of help facilitate them as they moved into the mid game, where we really started to see the roam and the power of Fluoride with especially those combos to help them get even further ahead and win some of these key fights, and also additionally some of those frozen shelters. So I feel like what we saw wasn't particularly gimmicky, and I also don't know that there's necessarily a particularly obvious, we've it's been revealed how they're going to play with this comp, we should just do this and it will create a completely different result. I think you really have to play heads up, avoid some of the win cons, I suppose, and especially that Fluoride, he did perform really well. The question, I suppose, to me is it an overperformance, because it was super key in really giving them a lot of edges. So hopefully Fluoride can do it again.
Yeah, and I think for Sharik, he's got to make the change of being really cautious, because as Viscous, I think that's when you run a Viscous against Mo, you pretty much always have to ult the Viscous first because of the threat of the cube save. And so I think that's something that Sharik could potentially play around now, especially the early mid game. Late game, maybe it won't matter quite so much because you could burst people so quickly before the saves come in, or you're getting pickoffs across the map. But But in that early mid game, that's where the viscous saves should potentially really pay dividends, because these Mo kills, not only are they, getting a kill, opening up the map with combo, but they're also snowballing Vindicta with the snipes. It just looks like a really strong mid game. And I think if that could shift against them, maybe there can be a bigger lead for buff enjoyers. If they're not finding those kills on Gamma, maybe there's a bigger lead for buff enjoyers. However, even for buff enjoyers, I don't think that the late game is necessarily safe. I think Piggy had a huge performance on the Kelvin, right? A couple big team fights decided by the Frozen Shelter. And that honestly, I think is something you have to be really worried about with how well Piggy was playing for buff enjoyers getting to the late game with this unconventional comp. It's really gonna struggle against the Frozen Shelter, right? Even, characters like Pocket and Lash, what can they really do?
Yeah, I mean, you stop and think what happened in the last match where, Piggy, one of the most veteran support players in the game, has been around, team to team where, fun fact too, Piggy was on Aegis, not Aegis. Yeah, Piggy was, I think, on Aegis Aurora for a time, and it got shifted off, last moment. Now found a new home here with Gamma. And yeah, I mean, Piggy just has very good support sense, and obviously, like Frozen Shelter was used right place, right time in multiple fights. Oftentimes to the detriment of Demov, who would just get isolated out and killed as a result. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that was working for Gamma in the last match. It wasn't just the Mo play that was coming in. Also, the fact that getting a Rejuvenator against McGinnis pressure isn't the easiest thing ever. And Gamma was still finding ways of getting in and getting Rejuvenator even under that pressure that was coming in from buff enjoyers.
Yeah, I was actually pretty excited to see that McGinnis pick and to see the impact of the wall, and it was good. I think we see more McGinnis lately as well. In general, it seems to be something that is a bit better in the meta. Do you guys think that this is because of how supports are being banned, or why do you think we're starting to see a bit more McGinnis? I know I'm sort of changing the topic slightly there, but I'm kind of curious as we have a moment to sort of discuss some of these things.
I mean, I think with the priority we've seen, especially last week in winning objective fights, I feel that's a key reason for McGinnis, with Wall just being probably arguably the best spell in the game other than ultis, that in terms of securing the rejuve, securing earn drop-offs. It's just such a crucial team fight skill. And then on top of that, I love that the McGinnis actually has a proper heal ability, which not so many supports in the game do. I guess, Kelvin sort of does. But if you buff up the heal potential, I mean, I think we saw the McGinnis last game having the healing locket and the magic wand, being able to really pump a lot of heals on the team. In the end, it's kind of what support does. It's just an annoying hero that has stuns, it has slows, there's these turrets you got to clear. And even if you kill her, if she's a support, you just don't feel so good about that. It's not that impactful of a kill. She can get her value, have her impact on the team fight, and die. And that's the dream for a support. That's exactly what you want when it comes to a support hero.
Well, you talk about dreams right now. Look, we got an extra map of EU Overwatch here today. or Overwatch, Deadlock. That's where I bring it. Yeah, no. Sorry, old habits. Very, very old habits. I'm processing so much right now as is going on. But extra map of EU Deadlock going in today, and yeah, Dan, we're getting into it. Of course, we'll touch back in with Jake at the end, and yeah, we'll see where this one goes. The replay of the best of one, this time with hopefully less Walker punching.
Yes, please less of that.
Well,
okay.
If somebody does punch a Walker, we can just end the game early.
True. That is fair. All right, so the lane configuration is going to be the same. So nothing new on that front. That means, CP, we got to make up new stuff to say.
Well,
I guess that's kind of our job, too. I suppose. Making up stuff to say is perhaps one way you could describe commentators, I guess. And now there's a pause.
Crash.
So we have to make up even more stuff, CP. It's really difficult here, us, for us casters.
Yeah, I mean, also there's the game chat that's going on where, Gamba, saying jumped on the Walker, so you got that. Well, the interesting thing is that game chat between two teams is definitely a little bit spicy getting into it, where Gamma is just you know what, it's fine, we'll win again. And, Listic coming back with the, you know what, I like that attitude. So, I'd say both teams are a little bit heated right now, Dan, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, they can vent their frustrations on the server, of course, and it's going to be really fun to see some of the differences, the permutations that we might get in this game, based off of what we saw earlier. again, like I don't know that there's necessarily like really massive learnings. It's more about just performing well with what you have. I don't think there's any like super gimmicky thing that wasn't really. There was like no answer for it for one team or the other. It really, I think, came down to just how these two teams are playing their effective, compositions. And we did see, this viscous McGinnis lane previously really dominating, which makes sense between the wall and the splatters and the puddle punches. There's so many, and the cube as well for survivability. So many options there for pressure. So we'd presume to see the same there. And I suppose DP, like saying all of this said, we do have some baselines to measure against. We saw that previously Gamma were really good at getting ahead via the objectives. Is this still going to be a way that they can sort of create an edge for themselves in the early to mid game?
Yeah, I mean, Gamma, not only were they holding even in the man-to-man, but they were also they were ahead on Guardians throughout much of the early game, and it definitely helped just stay ahead in combination with Fluoride landing good combos, but you can't look at the back and forth going on here. See Zanya and Lash a little bit into it. I mean, you don't really expect too much to happen in an Abrams lane unless, the player against Abrams just gets sloppy. Like, it's very hard to force an Abrams out. On the same note, if you keep your distance, it's, hard for Abrams to get a kill, but, Zanya at half is actually a little bit vulnerable here.
Indeed, I was just giggling because we had like the Earth Strike coming and it's completely whiffed, and then the melee in response completely whiffed from Abrams as well. So everyone's just whiffing everything and then going about their merry ways.
Looking back here into lane 2, this is McGinnis lane, where this lane was probably the most pressured lane in the last BO1 is Demon striking first on the Waldo, and you know what you see here. Switching gears for a moment, when you do get an early pickoff in a lane like this, oftentimes you'll see rotations that come help support sooner rather than later. So I would kind of expect Sussel on the Vindicta, if not now, but certainly around Gang 3K, just more pressure, in the lane 1 to even things out a little bit for Waldo.
Well, it doesn't really look like Shriek is having as fun of a time as he was in the previous match in the early stages. A lot more pressure onto him. Getting connected with by the crows, also not a fun thing to be happening. There's that McGinnis heal though. And I'm sure they'll be back to their usual tricks in a moment. Vindicta definitely very annoying here, taking to the skies once again. Obviously McGinnis' gun does a lot of damage, so you do have to be careful of this. And okay, we're getting somewhat of a dive there. And in the meantime, on lane 4, we get Listic under pressure again, courtesy of Zanya. Zanya, oh my god, what is he? He's going crazy.
Goes for the parry, but also eats a boatload of damage in the process. Getting that low, even as Abrams versus Slash, is not necessarily the best course of action. Playing on a knife's edge, but that happens. Mikhail runs afoul of Piggy back over in lane 3, so lane 3 pressure not going too bad for Gamma here thus far. 15k to 16k. In many ways, Dan, kind of a repeat of the last time where both teams were very close, at least until Ultimates came online and you had the rotations coming out from that.
Yeah, I think the only difference that I can maybe note, which is not a super consequential one, is just that I think earlier on, Buff and Joyce did manage to get some more of the kills, even though they were losing out on the souls. So now, slight edge on the souls, but not really taking as many fights to the death at least. So yeah, it's just a waiting game now for us at least to see. Okay, well, looks like Zanya's getting really low again, fighting against Listic, and there come the punches. Oh my god, he's gotten so many punches off. There's not a parry to be seen here, and it is the escape, the great escape for Listic. Hold your breath, 50 health, and he's out of there. I think he's safe.
Very few people survive the underground fist battle saves while not being at Abrams. But also, while that was going on, what I mentioned about Sussel going in to help Waldo exactly happened that way. Just did the quick low rotation or to the left, got the pick off on the Demon. So it's kind of rotation expected that happens. Oh my god.
Wow.
Spectral Barrage just pummels Sussel into the dirt. Very back and forth on both sides.
Shout outs to Sharik with connecting with the goo ball for that little stun to facilitate that one. Just really showing, I mean, we didn't talk about Barrage actually when Jake was kind of going through the abilities for McGinnis and sort of how she adds as a support. The Barrage as like a zoning tool is pretty incredible, even if it's not used directly for kills in some of these team fights. So yeah, able to control a lot of space with the McGinnis. And Buff and Joyers will definitely need to make good use of that. Oh, flying strike, and we're back out. And we're back in. It's Yamato. That's what else? What else can you say about Yamato?
Yeah, and you know, again, this is kind of a lane where at this point, you know, barring another person coming in, wouldn't expect too many one-on-one kills here and there. But you know, just pressure back and forth poke-wise can, you know, make your CS in lane a little bit more enjoyable and consistent. But right now, I'm looking at lane 2, where, you know, this is where things get a little bit spicy. Fluoride combo is on deck. I'd expect to be seeing some of the rotations now that we saw in the last game, where Fluoride was so effective at just going in, making Shriek's life miserable, and, you know, getting good rotations onto the side lanes.
Yeah, one thing I'll note is that Michaelis had much more of a soul advantage previously at this time on the previous match, and I think similarly to with Zergy as well. So although the soul score is close, the distribution is quite different actually in terms of those souls. So again, maybe not the most consequential thing at this time in the game, but we'll see how all of this sort of extrapolates out as we continue into that 10-minute mark. 3 minutes away to the British buffs, and I get the sense, CP, that everyone's playing a little bit more cautious across the board.
Yeah, I think tensions are high, even more than they would be under a normal BO1 circumstances, given we're at the replay. But you look at lane 3, Frozen Shelter, down from Piggy, Telekinesis, I'm Response, Zergy. But it might just be left there. You take a look, it's like, all right, is it going to dive in? It's like, no. The other side full committing. In the instance, the card's going out towards Toll in the back. Toll very, very low. Is Toll going to go down here, Dan? The card from downtown. Piggy jumps in front of it. Get down, Mr. President.
Very nice indeed. And Obiki, meanwhile, takes down Susilkovsky. And here comes the assist, Sharik, in here to help Demorph out. And that's going to mean some trouble here for Waldo. Half HP on the Shiv. Is he able to escape? The hot pursuit here. I don't know if there's a way to escape this. He's been trapped now. Underground, there's the quick jukes. They're trying to find a way with the dashes to escape, but the flying strike and just so much damage is going to amount to the kill. However, Demorph and Sharik, can they get out of here? Susilkovsky up in the sky now, looking to try to do some damage, but these guys are not very low, and so looking like they're going to be good for the escape. I don't think there's really anything else for assistance here for Susilkovsky, so it's going to be rather difficult to do much else. So they're going to be able to fall back off of this one. The Buff and Joyous players pretty happily with that kill on Waldo.
HP drops a score and into the combo. And you take a look who's nearby. Vindicta in the sky, looking for an assassinate. Now down on the ground, looking for an assassinate, and finds it. Very rare at this little play to actually see Vindictas miss opportunities like that.
Why delay the inevitable? Just come out and
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. Vindicta has also become quite the mainstay in many hero compositions recently with some of the buffs that we've seen over time. Back in goes Sharik, there goes the Google. Seeing if we can do something about these forward players, and going to have to come straight back out of it again. The wall going forward to try to trap the Gamma players who are trying to retreat, and it's not going to be able to catch anyone, it seems. They'll be able to escape, but they're going to re-engage TP.
No, Sissel wasn't able to get out fully. Sissel took cover in the subway tunnel. Wasn't quite enough. The stake at the beginning, though, was still really well timed. Gave a chance for a full escape, and at the very least, let one get away. So, could have been worse. Mo getting out in turn, 40k to 45k. Buff and Joyers at a slight edge. Again, you look at who's getting the farm in this instance, and it's not too bad. Demov 7k. As I say that, Listic, run afoul of Zanya. Right place, right time. Punches staying firmly on terra firma, though, this time around, Dan, you would think.
I just love how we came into the last POV there, the 6 POV, with no context, and we're just seeing him run away, and then suddenly Aimram just like slams down behind him. That was pretty comical for me, but looks like Waldo's in trouble once again, trying to escape it, but everything is against him. I don't think there's no more chance in hell that he's going to live. Waldo's going to go down surely. Still alive. Okay, well, there it is. Does fall, but Buff and Joyous in the meantime are going to be losing a Guardian, so perhaps the trade is worth it.
Fluoride hitting their groove right now, where, again, the last 3 minutes have been the cycle of combo goes up, hero goes down, just repeatedly, and just good timing from Gamma.
Oh, you love to see it. getting the value off of the ults is, I mean, it's one of the most important functions of Mo. So that means Mo's doing a good job, and we're going to see another Guardian go down here again. This was such a focal point of the early advantages in the previous match, but now having to try to fall back out of this one, Buff and Joyce have come, the Guardian's down, but maybe they can get some kills before their opponents are able to escape, and looking pretty good to do that. Here is Zergy trying to pursue with the Wraith, and that is a very Lozania. Nice connection with the melee charge. That's going to be a bit of a heal off of the melee, but surely there's, I mean, it can't survive for too much longer. There's so many players here, and there's the card to finish it off. The burst damage is good. And Buff and Joyce come away with a couple kills.
As Anya just getting chased down in the corner. And look, the fight is taking place still in lane 1 and in lane 4 equally. Mikhail in on the Piggy as Waldo. Find Obakim on the other side, just completely split between both teams. And again, Dan, it's a trade out. Very, very close. Neither team with a huge edge here just yet. And the key is, too, with some of these picks taking place on the outskirts, you don't have either team super keen to bring it to mid-boss, as it would be if it happened in lane 2 or 3.
Yeah, and it seems like Gamma are struggling a little bit more than they were in the previous match around this time. We'll have to see if there's a recovery, but yeah, here comes the Frozen Shelter. And Listic, I don't know, he's trying to juke, he's trying to jive, he's got the fancy footwork, but doesn't really matter. Nice pick up there for Gamma. So as I was saying that they may be having a bit more of a struggle, looks like there is somewhat of a recovery with those 3 kills that they just picked up.
So I take a look at pressure in over on lane 2. Telekinesis is going to be coming in from Zergy. But it's tactical here, where Telekinesis comes in, heads on out, doesn't know exactly where everyone is on the other team, and if Zergy did, it would be all the more reason to get out of there in a hurry. 3 people on the rotation. Meanwhile, we have 3 people. We got 3 of Gamma in on lane 3. Mikhail floating in on the top. Definitely doesn't want to go in just yet. But you take a look there, Dimov could be getting collapsed on. And no, Dimov, you only get the teleporter before the pressure comes on it.
We are farming. Buff and Joyous, they are honestly looking pretty good. Zergy's, he's getting kind of strong. As is Mikhail S. I think a nice recovery from Mikhail S. And this lineup just generally does scare me. You know, having the Pocket, the Wraith, the Yamato, it just feels very like the burst damage can be kind of wild, especially some of the spirit damage. So yeah, I definitely have to watch out in some of these fights, but they're quite a tanky lineup themselves, so they have managed to mitigate that somewhat in that sense. And see what other objectives are going to be next here for the taking. We do have the urn coming up in a minute. Definitely worth taking. Maybe the first urn really not as much of a consideration, but the second one more so.
Yeah, and also, again, with urn, especially as you get to the 15-minute urn, the question is what you get for it. But right now, you got a team fight. Secret shop, wall in from Guinness early. You see Sharik rotating over. D-ball 3 seconds for cooldown. And it's a quick leave from Gamma, where, by the way, smart maneuver. I don't think if a team especially is running McGinnis and Viscus, that you should at all be wanting to take fights indoors, and that's even without considering the Vindicta, right? If you're buff enjoyers and you're looking at ideal areas to take a fight, you want to bait people into Secret Shop, and if you're Gamma, you stay far away.
Stay far away. Good advice, good advice. There's the Frozen Shelter coming out. That's going to help to protect against the buffs, although the buffs are not for another 5 seconds, so maybe a little bit premature. Death Slam coming in from over the top. Ballistic is trying to initiate the fight here for Buff Enjoyers to get this favorable circumstance around the bridge buff. I'm not sure we managed to pick that one up, but the fight continues regardless. Mikhail S is down, Demorph getting low, so is Zergy. Gamma is trying to follow up these kills, but able to peel away Demorph to chase up that kill, gets into the teleporter to get out of dodge, but his team, oh no, hello.
Wait, no, not out yet.
Able to intercept DP.
Yeah, Demov says, I'm going to stay for a little longer, but it ends up being a trade instead, gives his life for it. Now looking at Waldo. Trying to get someone else low in the killing blow range. Low HP, and it's Sharik. Finishes just in time before that threshold. And it's Gamma falling 1 down in the exchange, but still very, very even overall. Meanwhile, Gamma pushing on the other side, and I think Fluoride, no combo up, but says, you know, we'll do it the old-fashioned way. Sissel in hot pursuit Looking for Shriek. Shriek right now looking for any way out. No goo ball. Has to do it just on normal abilities. As you see Listic coming in on the rotation. A little bit of support. Forces Sussel out onto the rooftops. 50 HP and just gets struck down.
Yeah, nice pick off. That does close the gap a little bit for Buff and Joyous. Still 5k behind on the souls at least. And Gamma, I feel like Gamma, really created a resurgence for themselves. They were falling a bit behind a little early, or rather earlier on. Now they're looking like they're in more of a commanding position. And obviously mid boss is up these days. We've got the urn collection happening as we speak. I don't know that there's anything to stop that. Indeed, that will be going to Buff and Joyous. So I'm really thinking about this mid boss right now. Is there a way to facilitate that? And obviously pushing for objectives, creating a team fight, that could be one way to do it. We've got a defense here taking place on lane 3 Walker for Buff and Joyous. And there's a lot of players here, ZP. They're definitely looking for an opportunity, as is Fluoride, as always, with that combo.
Yeah, I mean, Gamma has done the best in team fights where they're saying their own terms, especially if it's Fluoride, just able to, get in onto an ideal target. Oftentimes, it's been the Viscous pre-Goo Ball. It's been Demov before Shadow Transformation is in play. And if you're Buff Enjoyers, I feel like to an extent, you're cautious of what Mo can do in that situation, but you also have to be careful, not necessarily to throw Shadow Transformation away because a Mo is somewhat nearby you, or to give up too much map control and map presence, because you look at where the jungling is taking place, Gamma is more than willing to do some light invades in the Buff Enjoyer side right now.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense because with that combo, if someone tries to initiate against you, you can just quickly get a combo. And if that person is just trying to harass and buy time for his teammates to come to stop you from doing that jungling, you might be in trouble. There might be that window where if a combo lands, you're completely helpless. So you do have to be really cautious with the way that Gamma is playing with their comp. It did feel like for a moment, Gamma were looking to or considering trying to take down that lane 1 Walker. And these extremity walkers are kind of nice because it does force a really big positional change from your opponents. And should your opponents get some kills on you, is also a much longer run to maybe the mid boss, for example. So those extremity walkers are definitely more choice, usually, in terms of risk profile.
Right now, a lot of the action going on lane 2. Both teams jockeying position around each other. Pride looking for an opportunity. Danny right now, trying out a little bit with Listic. Both teams being very, very careful on what they commit to right now, Dan. Where I definitely feel like we're seeing more caution in this best one than the previous map. Just a little bit. Oh, and there it is! Combo in from Fluoride from underground. Down goes Shriek. Right place, right time. Fluoride. A very clean pickoff here, Dan. Sets up a clear 6-on-5. And now for Gamma. What do they do with it? Do they go for push or do they go for mid?
Yeah, mid boss does seem tempting. Outrageous combo. And you can see Buff and Joy is certainly worried about this. Death Slam is available from above, potentially. However, Piggy does have the Frozen Shelter, so you can always pop that dome on the Rejuve as it falls to protect it. There's definitely options to play against that. So, but, you have to be cautious, whichever option you choose. And you can see that Buff and Joy and Gamma have sort of fanned out, not really liking that mid-boss attempt after that previous pick.
Yeah, I don't know if 6-on-5 is enough, especially when you're going against Yamato that can shadow transform and, essentially hard push the Rejuvenator. And also, even though they're the play around Obi Kim's walls to begin with, I think in a full-on scrum, even up a player, if you're up against shadow transformation into McGinnis wall, I think you'd have to say more times than not, it's more likely to go Buff Enjoyers and even fight. So I think if you're Gamma, it makes sense to back off and not go for it, even though, a lot of times teams will go for it in 6-on-5.
Well, there's that shadow transformation you were talking about. Ooh, good nice power slash connecting on 2 players. Having to fall back, though, very dangerous territory as Buff Enjoyers are definitely in a little bit of trouble here. Gamma just pushing in, and there's Fluoride with the cube coming in to try to mitigate that combo, and that's going to allow Buff Enjoyers to redirect their efforts now, actually pushing Gamma back. They're on the retreat, but will they try to turn around in this fight? I don't know that they have the players left to do it at this point. Gamma losing 2 players deep gives Buff Enjoyers full control of the fight and possibly a mid-boss to boot.
Yeah, that taking place at Secret Shop is super ideal for Buff Enjoyers. Now they get to work on mid-boss. They're going to be able to secure it with McGinnis. You would think if McGinnis gets over there, Right now, they're not going full mid boss. In fact, the pressure from Gamma on top is making him think twice, but they lose Sussel! However, here's the thing, Dan, in that level of delay, you're about to have the Shiv and the Abrams back up. Your window for mid boss a little bit smaller. Nope, they decided we're sending it here and now. We'll see if they secure it or if there's even a steal attempt. From the looks of it, Gamma just gonna let this one go.
Okay, so this is a pretty big difference to the first game. The first game between these two, Gamma picking up these rejuves. They actually had a huge kind of turnaround at this point in the game into a rejuve, but there it is. There's the Warp Stone straight into the combo, onto the Viscous. Huge pick-off, obviously. Viscous is the only one that can save Viscous with the cube, but he's disabled by the ult, so there goes Viscous. Walker down here for buff enjoyers, but is there any answer from Gamma? Can they find a way to take some players down here for this?
I mean, trading out 2 isn't the worst. Dropping the shelter right now, looking for D-Mob. D-Mob, 100 HP. Shadow Transformation back up in the nick of time. Gonna drop it and just gets dropped in turn. Still too much damage around the outskirts. So, for being down Rejuve, Gamma's really making most of it. Now you take a look, so Obacam just desperately trying to get away from the sliding mole.
It's just us out here.
And does get away. I think Gamma being very measured in how far they want to take some of these chases, and you gotta pause coming in.
Really interesting stuff, CP, because every time I kind of feel like one team's gaining an edge, taking an advantage, maybe that momentum is hitting them, it just flips on its head. You know, like you said, despite having the rejuve, Gamma managed to actually get a really positive result there and are really proving that they are still in this, and that fluoride honestly really is as much of a problem as ever. It's just so reliably getting these opening picks, especially on Sharik, which is a really key player to actually get a combo onto.
Yeah, and I think Sharik is the target of focus here for multiple reasons, but not the least of which is that Viscous, taking Viscous down pre-Goo Ball is a lot easier than, you know, in the middle of the fight. And also the fact that it stops Viscous from cubing anyone else that might be comboing, but via cube. Cube comes in, hit combo. Just as I'm making that point. Might be enough to save here. Gamma, though, still hungry for eliminations if they can find it. Buff Enjoyers pushing up in turn. Pushing onto the Walker. Another Gamma Walker down. Telekinesis, meanwhile, in Zanya. Diving into the back line. Charge over. Together, Zergi gets Piggy on the backside. One down for Gamma right now. Zanya half HP.
Pretty big fight.
Looking for consistent push.
Yeah, the urns on the ground as well, so that's the tasty prize for the victors of this fight, as Walker does finally fall, and all of the action is unmitigated at this point. Everybody is fighting underground, and it's not looking good for Gamma. 3 players dead already. It's going to be more. There's the 4th one dropping also, and Buff Enjoyers still with a couple rejuves to their name are going to be able to really get a lot of pressure off of that. And these Guardians outside the base are absolutely dead. They are so very dead.
Yeah, I think if you're Buff Enjoyers, you're more than happy to come in here, grab 2 shrines, and call it down. As I say that, in comes a combo. However, this time around, it might be Fluoride getting punished. See Mikhail going in, but no, still Listic, unable to get away. Fluoride just barely getting back in the base, so the shrine goes down, but still Fluoride getting a little bit of punishment in turn.
There's no way Fluoride lives there. Absolutely crazy. A nice aesthetic buckshot from Zanya to take down Obacam mid-air. Buff Enjoyers really getting a lot of value there, CP. That's like maybe the biggest shift in souls that we've seen, just through the combination of winning a team fight plus the subsequent objective kills. However, we can't really count Gamma out. I mean, we've seen them perform pretty well with this lineup. They're still only about 10k souls behind, so it's not really that big of a difference. It feels like the next mid-boss cycle is really where, you know, we're going to get a lot more information as to who's going to be pulling ahead or not.
I was going for the grapple. Doesn't quite pan out. Sharik, Goo Ball. Just you staying out of trouble here is what we're seeing there. And yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing in terms of, you know, how Gamma's been playing it, even down, you think about the economy difference between both teams. Mo takes down a hero that's 27k or more. Well, guess what? You've now instantly put yourself in a much bigger advantage. And I have to say, too, for as valued as Paradox has been and as good as Paradox is as a hero, I feel like we've still seen more clean pickoffs from Mo comps than we even see from Paradox comps right now, which is kind of ridiculous how that's evolved.
Agreed. And, well, the urn is going to be delivered, it seems, or at least the attempt is going to be made by Gamma. Buff Enjoyers making their way across. Let's take up in the sky, trying to find an engagement. There is the Frozen Shutters to try to protect against all of the nastiness from Buff Enjoyers as they are in the air, flying around, trying to get these initiations. And the fight is just getting pulled into the bridge here. And I can't see a single thing, ZP. There's so many particle effects on my screen.
Well, all you have to know there is that they use the Frozen Shelter to secure the urn. Toll lands a perfectly timed last stand, goes in. So Buff Enjoyers not only lose urn, they lose 2 kills on top of it. Mid-boss only 2 minutes away, and it was just great positioning by Gamma that really set that up.
So you're telling me, ZP, that Gamma once again have turned the tables.
Yes.
They've evened things up. They're back in it again.
They are very much in it right now, and I think the other thing too, you know, for Gamma, if you can take these fights, especially in the open, which the urn fight is, I think it plays to your advantages. I think the one way Gamma loses this right now is if they get dragged into a secret shop fight or they get dragged into a big mid-boss fight without any sort of advantage, because that's where things like getting walled off can be more of a pain. That's where your Vindicta might not get as much value, but, you know, how they were able to take the fight on urn, the setup off the shelter into just Toll being in the right spot at the right time, you know, turned a fight that they were a little bit behind going into it, but now, of course, fully even. Zanya trying to go in the tier 3 camp, but doesn't actually know how many people might be weighing the wings, but now it says, I'm gonna go for it. Pocket, you don't scare me.
Okay, so we are 30 seconds out from the mid-boss, so this is very interesting stuff. As pretty much all the jungle in the entire map has been eaten up at this point. Like, what other focal point is there other than this impending mid-boss? So we'll have to see what Gamma can do to potentially maybe get an initiation. Fluoride has been so consistently good on the Mo with this. You can see, so waiting here, looking to see whether there is a warp zone into a combo.
He was looking for Shriek again. Shriek was in the area and, you know, this time doesn't get pummeled by a mole. But I think the other thing that we haven't really touched on too much here, too, is that Toll's also had a great game on the Warden. He's ahead of the curve game-wise, and it's the state in Warden where Warden can use Last Stand early and really force a lot of rotations out of the other team. So the frontline situation for Gamma is good, on top of just being on 24/7 Fluoride watch.
Yeah. Seriously, Shriek needs to file a restraining order. There's I mean, this is... It's abuse at this point. It is just abuse. Well, here comes the fight around the mid boss, it would seem. Lots of levels here, so you're gonna be pretty cautious in how you decide to take these fights. It's very hard to calculate in these dynamic deadlock team fights.
Telekinesis got used, but the rotation pushed Buff Enjoyers out, so there is a window here for Gamma to fight and not have to worry about Zergy dropping a telekinesis. So, you know, if you're Gamma, you're a little bit more incentivized to look for a fight there, but still, you can't be dragged into the wrong area. Now, see Zergy a little bit onto Toll from the back. Doesn't full commit. Brings Toll down to about 75%. And there it is. We have Fluoride dropping the combo, and the punish is there immediately. Listic, the target of choice this time, not Shriek. Zanya doing a little bit of wall climbing, drops the charge. Cube stymieing Shriek on the ball. Everything taking place is top middle as it gets, Dan. Zanya, though, gonna drop on down, looking for Mikhail. D-Mob on the outskirts, finishes off Sussel. Zanya just gets baited into the indoor area, gets a shot of goo. But now Toll, still healthy, dropping last stand. Close quarters fight in progress. Both teams down 2 right now. Toll still very, very healthy. Fluoride in on the side, looking for Zergy, sets up Waldo. In on the killing blow. And Gamma, 3-2 advantage for them here thus far. And was a very methodical fight positioning-wise. And they say, Dan, we're bringing it to mid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the moment. Well, obviously, they are down 2 players, so there is a potential chance for Buff Enjoyers to maybe try to harass here. And in fact, yeah, Gamma are deciding to actually pull off of that. They're going to take...
I know why, Dan. They didn't like the lane situation at all. I think they looked at where the lanes were at, and they were still at risk of getting contested on mid-boss or just losing more things base-wise. They decided lane control was the way to go.
Yeah, that's a great point. That makes total sense. And it's certainly a bitter pill to have to swallow in this instance. You know, the game could be decided by picking up the mid boss, but it could also be decided by taking a mid boss fight when it's not a good time to do so. So it's just one of those choices, hard choices you got to make. The earn is up as well, and that also wasn't something that they were able to collect whilst Buff and those players were down. And you know, one argument is also probably due to the lane control. So rough situation as we watch once again Fluoride just in these forward positions, setting himself up to try to find picks off of a warp stone into a combo. And okay, we have the earn, so this is going to precipitate the next big team fight, I would imagine. Here's ZP.
Yeah, well, they can immediately Fluoride starting off with the combo. Not sure who he's on here yet, but does not immediately result in a kill. Take a look at our end now. Response, shelter down. Wall out in response. Buff Enjoyers still reasonably healthy. Toll in off the side. Last stand. It's a lot of last stand value here, Dan. Hitting 4, but Toll still getting pummeled in turn. A lot of focus on Toll. Still able to get out of the danger zone. Blast in turn. Zanya punishes Sharik on top. And now Gamma right now, they need to get away. Both Toll and Waldo super low. Buff Enjoyers in on the punish. Wall comes in. They'd love to get Toll here too. Toll, low HP power slash in, down he goes. And Gamma losing 4. And it's going to be Buff Enjoyers turning their attention to the mid boss now, Dan.
Yes, this is not what Gamma wanted to have happen. That is a disaster for them. And they're going to be so much trouble now. Obviously, they still have shrines up and so on. So the worst outcome here possibly for them is losing everything in the base, but they won't lose the match necessarily. So still chances to recover and still chances to find favorable fights, even with the rejuve being on Buff Enjoyers. You know, that soul disparity, the stat check, you know, there isn't really a disparity there. So we'll actually see the earn potentially collected behind all of this for Buff Enjoyers, but still, you know, Gamma, it looks bad, but it's not as bad as maybe it could be.
Yeah, I think it's super likely that they lose first stage Patron here, although it's starting to get to a thing where this is a little bit dangerous. Buff Enjoyers is mid-maxing. You know, they're going for earn at the same time. First stage Patron going to go down. The question is, do they lose anyone on the retreat? And I think the timing just lines up enough, Dan, that they're able to get people out, not feed anyone else, and put themselves essentially on match point. But yeah, overall on the economy, far, far from over thus far.
Indeed, yeah, and it was great that, you know, we saw Buff Enjoyers just kind of in and out there, very clean. And one of the reasons why I like that too is because every second is valuable. There's a jungle, I think, just spawned on the entire map that's ready to be cleaned up. So it's an additional edge that they can farm, I suppose. Whilst Gamma are just trying to respawn in and trying to gather themselves, Buff Enjoyers can extend that soul lead further. So it's all about obviously finding any advantage and any edge and leveraging it as much as you can. And that's what Buff Enjoyers are doing now. We see, I think, for the first time, like the largest disparity in souls, but it's still only, I mean, it's still pretty minimal, like 20k. But that's the biggest difference we've seen so far.
I mean, I think the tale of this game so far, and including the last game too, is that when it's this close, it's not so much about the farm between both teams, but how the fight starts and where, you know, what are the conditions for how it begins. Where if Gamma's able to get a nice wide open fight, it really works to their strengths. You think about what happened last fight. It started in like the closed-in enclave near Secret Shop, and it made things very, very problematic for Gamma. A wall, you know, mitigated a lot of their damage. I don't think Sussel was able to get a great angle. So even the push in here is, with everyone up for Gamma, Buff Enjoyers has to be so methodical in how they go about this.
Well, in they go. And it's all about these opening fights here. This could end the game here for Gamma. They've got to find good engagements. Listic over the top here with that lash down on the Earth Strike into the weakened Patron. They're going to be potentially in a position where they can focus fire it down to actually collect the
They're just going for Patron. Their main goal is Patron. They got Frozen Shelter out though. In turn, Listic low on the outskirts. All DPS in. The combo is out. Buff Enjoyers just go for base. Nothing but base. Everyone's going down. Buff Enjoyers themselves are going down. Have they finished off the Patron here, Dan? No, they have not. It is a full team wipe for Gamma. It's a full turnaround. They protect the Patron, and now they're going to send it back down the other side.
Yeah, earn is potentially up to be collected. Of course, all the lanes have to be evened out here for Gamma. But what an absolutely clutch Frozen Shelter. The timing of that couldn't have been more pivotal there. So Piggy needs to be getting some high fives for that one at the very least. And actually, it doesn't look like they'll be able to go for the urn, given the fact that obviously the fast respawn time for Buff Enjoyers will prevent an easy turn in.
Okay, here's the question here. The patron regens reasonably quickly. Buff Enjoyers, they're full up. They're all going down left side. Dan, they might just send it again.
It actually does regenerate pretty fast. So if there's any good measurable amount of delay from Gamma, Buff Enjoyers will have to take down the Patron just from full HP. So they do need to be very cautious about this. But yeah, you're right, CP. That it does look like they are sending it.
If you're Gamma here, you need to try and engage this before it gets into the Patron. They still have 2 Guardians up, but at this point in the game, they're essentially paper. However, on the same note, your Buff Enjoyers, you take a look at that HP bar, it just goes up so quick, Dan, that I don't know if they are going to be able to do this. And in fact, you take a look, they're backing up a bit now.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things at this point as well is that a lot of this can come down also to manipulation of your opponent's positioning. So by showing some pressure, you force a response and that response is, okay, well, they were pressuring us over in this location, so we have to move towards that location. But the people that are responding are always on a lag to the people that are taking the initiative. So that gives you the option as the opponents of Gamma, in this instance, as Buff Enjoyers, to say, okay, we're going to pressure this spot, then we can move elsewhere very quickly, and we're creating our own like macro positional openings. Is one of the things that you're thinking of in macro like this. And if we think about how important it is for Gamma to get these pickoffs with like combo or something like that, to have a fight where they start off with numbers advantage, right now that's gonna be very hard to do, CP, because Buff Enjoyers are just sticking together at this point.
I think the last thing Buff Enjoyers want to do is give off a free Mo and Krill pickoff. Because yeah, you look at that urn, that is a full team urn. That's everyone, follow the leader. Buddy system, whatever you want to call it, all the way over. However, going for the open urn turn in, well, I'd say it's problematic, but here's the thing. They see Shiv down to the right. They know it's free. Pure and simple. Like, they have 6 there. It's not going to be 6 contesting. And as soon as Shiv showed in lane 4, that was it. Quick turn in. And slight edge to Buff Enjoyers, although, again, at this point, it's so much more important how the fight actually begins.
Yeah, it's... like you said about the Guardians at their paper, the margin for error in these team fights is also even more minimal at this point, because you got a 42k Yamato, 43k Pocket, 48k Wraith on Buff Enjoyer's end of things. So you can die very quickly at this point. And there's the mid boss, and I am afraid for everyone right now.
Also, you look at the positioning here. Buff Enjoyers going to the top. This is, of course, the last time they fought in this exact positioning, it did not necessarily go well for them. But you look at Fluoride right now, just creeping around, using as much deception as you can to set up the combo. Waldo positioned a bit of ways away, and it's just this game of chess between both teams on setting up the terms of the team fight.
Yeah, it's so interesting how the architecture of the middle of the map is designed around the mid-boss, because there are so many levels. And so it does create this really interesting thing where you can't kind of guarantee necessarily how a team fight's going to develop. But with that said, falling out of that mid position into lane 3, the initiation.
And they go for the combo and the fall through off the rescue beam to bring him back is what we just saw. Instead though, Listic over, Death Slam, Mikhail with the fall through, a clean 3 for Buff Enjoyers, all healthy. And Dan, that might be game. The GG's being called by Gamma. You don't need a mid boss when you get 4 like this. You just send it on home.
Yeah, it's it's not even a victory lap. They're just going to claim what is theirs. And well, I'm sure they'll be very happy about this, considering why we're even having to replay this match. So Buff Enjoyers, a consistent storyline here at Deadlock Fight Night, are going to be picking up the first best of 1 against Gamma in a very hard-fought match, but a very well-deserved one, as they are now going to be up against our previous week's winners, Aurora. Aegis Aurora, that is.
Whew. This had storylines back and forth, both in the original best of 1 and now into the second. But that game, Jake, went everywhere. And take it from the top. There's a lot to go after, but what really stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I felt the early game was a lot more stable for both teams. I think both teams probably, taking the opportunity of the reset to play a little bit more cautiously, a little bit more carefully than they did in the first go around. So I think both teams were definitely taking it a little bit slower. And then as we got deeper into the match, I felt really was back and forth both ways. All came down to a couple critical mid boss fights, I think. Got to credit though for sure. Zergy, I think, had a really solid game, just very consistent, staying alive deep. Listic also had some really big moments on the lash, culminating with, of course, that final team fight, those final pickoffs, securing the game. But I mean, come on, it all had to come down to that patron race with Gamma holding the patron with the help of the frozen shelter. I thought for sure Buff Enjoyers, well, they're not out of it at that point, but it starts to get really scary when you throw a full team wipe away like that. Let your opponents back into the game. If they had gone for it again when they were running it back down the side lane, I think they could have lost the game right there with the enemy team defending you at the choke, 6-manning down one lane. It's such a risky way to fight. So I was pretty worried for Buff and Joyers at that moment, but they managed to stay calm and regroup, and well done by them to bring it back here in the rematch.
Yeah, and you take a look at where we're at right now on the overall stat screen here. I think it was you, Jake, who really went into the idea of like, okay, should Buff and Joyers be playing the 7 as much? What's the value of the 7? And, and talking around, I think the value of the 7 for a lot of people was the idea is like, well, you have more frontline priority. They gave up frontline priority here. They did not end up with Shiv or Warden, but they got an early pick onto the Wraith, and Zergy, as a result, had a much better game. Is this something where you're looking at draft strategy and, Jake, given your criticism last week, you look at this now and you're like, yeah, this was the right move?
Well, I do think this draft was still a little sketchy for Buff Enjoyers. Like, I don't think this is exactly what they wanted. I think I still think they, I think they played the better game, especially on the rematch, and they made the right adjustments. But it was a little bit less comfortable than a lot of the other matches have been. I feel that really Mo and Krill keeps coming up for me as a stronger character in these like organized matches. I think it might be slept on just a little bit because in ranked a little bit less coordination. The combo is not so consistent. But it feels like, especially combo with that Vindicta, such a nasty, power setup. You're snowballing the Vindicta, getting free kills. And then late game, sometimes you're able to open team fights really, really well with Mo. So I feel this Mo, could be more of a mainstay as the tournament goes on. Draft-wise, though, again, I don't think this was a draft win for Buff and Joyers. I think this really was them executing better, especially in the rematch. I mean, the fact that we saw the series go both ways shows that, for me, it really does come down to the execution. Cool to see Mikhail's on the pocket, though. I think he did well. He was pretty consistent on the pocket. It's definitely a big hero to have in the pool because it really does change the game drastically when there's a pocket involved.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was actually really surprised to see his performance. We don't tend to see Pocket very often. It's like something, it's the specialist really, but obviously Mikhail S has a great one. So it was fun to see that actually being pretty pivotal, especially in a match that was as close and as skilled as this.
Well, speaking of matches close and skilled as this, you got to highlight who the absolute best player was when we get into our Intel player of the match. And Jake, I believe you're the one choosing here. Who you got?
Yeah, I know, Chad. I know. Picking the Wraith player. I was mostly just focused on the objective damage here from Zergy. I mean, he absolutely crushed the objective damage. I think he had 30k this game. It was a ridiculous performance in terms of tower pressure and opening up walkers, opening up the map. I think that's really, a key factor for the Wraith players, that they're able to get active pressure objectives. They're not just jungling, right? If you're having the same damage, doing a lot of jungling, not able to pressure down objectives yourself, your team would have to do a lot more in the mid game. But I think Zergy, with how active he's getting, still being that like top net worth final carry in the late game, for me, exactly what you need out of Wraith. And I mean, as long as this character is as strong as it is, there's got to be a lot of POTMs on this character.
It's actually really interesting to me with Wraith that I feel like we've been seeing Wraith be more of a hero where it's not as essential in terms of the carry or the playmaking in that regard, but it's like this insane support to the playmaker, and that's something that I suppose going to be reflected by some of the changes to the ult and so on and so forth. But the damage is truly outrageous, and Zergy is obviously known for just crushing. So very well deserved, and it's going to need to put up that performance again in the next best of 3 that we got coming up.
Yeah, I know for me, I'm super excited to see what Aegis Aurora is going to be doing in response to all this, where they've got a good look at the new looks of Buff and Joyers, some of the adjustments, and they were a team that really surprised us strategically last week. But with that being said, we're going to be going to a quick break. When we come back, our EU money match, best of 3, Buff and Joyers looking to take on Aegis Aurora to reclaim the throne.
about me Guinness.
Let's see them try to